Well, I think there are, last Collier, there are two big issues here. One is the opportunity which was presented as a result of revelations about misconduct in the administration of Garda Síochána and so on. The opportunity to bring in a police service which was accountable, which lives up to the sacrifice and the public service of the vast majority of the members of that service, which takes it away from the political patronage and control which was normal here for a very, very long time. And Sinn Féin argued very strongly for Garda Síochána to be patronised, for the Patent Commission's approach to be adopted in relation to all of these matters. Now, the hesitant and the slow way and the protracted way that the government has gone about this, I think, has undermined that opportunity. And I would just appeal to you to understand that there are issues of public confidence involved here. Then the second issue is the one that you are at the very centre of, and that's the difficulty that the Fennelly Commission has to send its report to you. And the Garda Commissioner, Martin Cullinan, resigned or retired or was sacked almost a year ago on March the 25th. Now, sources close to the former Commissioner are reported in the media saying that he was left with no option and that he was effectively forced out of his job after being visited on the night of March the 14th by Brent Purcell, the Secretary-General of the Department of Justice. And we know that Mr Purcell was sent by you to meet the Garda Commissioner at that time. Now, there's one issue I just want to put to you very, very, very clearly. There have been countless media reports, which might be totally untrue and unfounded, that you were recalled by the Commission to give evidence to it, and you have refused to comment on this. And you have chosen to hide behind the claim that to answer this question would be an offence. But that's patently not true. You've already said you went and gave evidence to the Commission. I have said and confirmed that I spoke to the Commissioner. Agus Neil Rudd san acht a Coran Cusk Ort Ara an Rotu Mar Venia Agus ar Glake ar Aishu. There's nothing in the Act to prevent you from saying that you were called back. And what's the problem of being called back? And this is an issue then again of public confidence, that you end up almost transfixed by this issue and refusing to simply confirm. And therefore I would ask you to confirm if you were called back, or indeed if you were not called back. To ask you how many times have you been called to give evidence, and it isn't a big issue. Now, as you've said a few times, you see, you put it in a sort of a negative way, and I was listening to what you said, that the Commission couldn't send its interim report until after the Bailey case, where in fact my recollection is that the Commission would send its interim report after the Bailey case to yourself, to Alan Shatter, to the Secretary-General of your department, and so on. Now, that hasn't happened. And you have not, unless I've misheard you, said that when you receive that draft report, and we don't know when you're going to receive it, will you publish it? So I would ask you that, and if you've already answered that question, I apologise for my ignorance. But it would be a useful thing to publish the draft report, and also to allow the Dáil to have an opportunity to debate this issue. You also say that you cannot set a timetable, and that any attempt to raise a question around this is in some way impugning the integrity of the single member or of the Commission, and that is not the case. The Dáil Committee on Justice recommended that a time frame for the modules dealing with the departure of the former Garda Commissioner, or the letter he sent to the Department of Justice, or the investigation of other elements of this of this case, should have a timetable, and the terms of reference ignored that, set it to one side. So, in other words, the Fennelly Commission is effectively open-ended. It can go on forever, and that's not in your interest as a Taoiseach who's doing your best. It's not in the interest of the government. It's not in the interest, more particularly, of Garda Síochána and the public confidence in that service. And the Commission of Investigations Act 2004 states, and I quote, "The power to set a Commission's terms of reference includes the right to amend at any time before the submission of the Commission's final report those terms with the consent or at the request of the Commission for the purpose of clarifying, limiting or extending the scope of its investigation." So, it's not too late to amend the terms of reference and to set a fixed time frame. So will you now consider amending the terms of reference to set a clear time frame for the completion of the Fennelly Commission of Investigation? Now here's the thing, Taoiseach. You have 9 minutes and 50 seconds. You can talk the clock down. You can wireless and waffle and go through all of this. Or you can, in a few brief remarks, answer the questions that I have put to you. 1, were you recalled to the Commission? 2, will you consider putting a clear time frame, as you are permitted to do under the Commission of Investigations Act 2004? 2 simple, straightforward questions, clears these issues up and allows the work of the government and of Garda Síochána, and particularly the work of public confidence in you, in your handling of this issue, in your government's handling of this issue, and particularly the work being done by the people who are out there on the beat, protecting citizens and keeping public order.
Margaret Taoiseach.
Well, I could certainly turn that speech back on your good self. Yeah, no, I don't. I'm not. Okay. I'm not going to get into that. But you actually have. You're the person who says answer a few simple questions. Yes, and you're the president and leader of the Sinn Féin party, and you have. So does everybody else. No, I'm not going to talk down the clock. I want to deal with the line of questioning that you followed here. First of all, you say that there are 2 big issues here. That the question of living up to the requirements of the people and not have the Gardaí under patronage and control. These are the words that you use. That's why the decision by the government to have an independent policing authority, to have a Garda Commissioner appointed by public advertisement, by international competition and selection, and the same process for Deputy Commissioners, is so different than what applied since the foundation of this state in regard to the appointments made here. You say that the government have undermined that opportunity. I disagree with you entirely, Deputy Adams. And the government did consider the process that had been underway in Northern Ireland when Mr. Patton was put in charge of dealing with the structure and the propositions for that. We decided that it was a different requirement here, but I think the fundamental issue insofar as the Gardaí are concerned, you now have an independent policing authority, enhanced powers for the Garda Ombudsman's Commission, an independent process of selection and reporting by the Garda Commissioner, independent processes for the Deputy Commissioners and all of that. That is so different, Deputy, than what used to be applied before. Commissioner?
Sorry, Deputy.
I'm not talking to you.
No, please, order, please.
I'm talking to Deputy Adams here.
Please to conclude on this.
I'm answering. I don't know whether you were here to listen to him or not, but he did start off by talking about revelations in regard to the administration of justice and living up to the patronage and control. These are points that were made by Deputy Adams, and I'm entitled to answer them, and I'm not answering questions to you. Now, in respect of, you also make. You make points about countless media reports, and you ask me whether I was called back to the Commission of Investigation. I've already given my view on this. I received correspondence from the Commission the same as other people. I responded to that in writing and in evidence at the Commission. And I'm not going further than that. When the Commission's report is received by me, the final report, it will be published by me as the sponsoring minister in accordance with the law. You also say that it's not a big issue, though you started off by saying that it was a big issue. Now, you make the point that this could not have been dealt with until after the Bailey case. Now, that decision was made clearly by Judge Fennelly, not by anybody else. He made that decision, and he is in sole control of this Commission of Investigation. Where people were saying, we want this dealt with in here, or at the Oireachtas Committee, and you want an independent Commission of Investigation. When you have an independent Commission of Investigation, you want it to be dealt with your way. The terms of reference were debated in the House, they were approved by the House, they were amended by the House. They were amended by the House already, because the request that came from the Oireachtas Committee on Justice, which Deputy Martin said was an add-on, was a unanimous request and letter to me from the Oireachtas Committee asking that the terms of reference would be amended to include these two elements that should be investigated from the Oireachtas Committee's point of view by the Commission of Investigation. And I agreed with that request. And I also made the point that, well, I wasn't in a position, or the committee or anybody else, to dictate to the sole member that if it were possible for him to bring forward an interim report on these two matters at an earlier date, then that he should do so if he considered that to be appropriate and relevant. So the Commission terms were amended to take into account the formal unanimous request from the Oireachtas Committee, and I duly had that amended and debated here. So the position is, can I indicate to you when I expect to receive the final report? I can't, because the Justice has already said in his letter that he did not propose to send sections of the interim report to persons who were spoken to by the Commission until such time as the Bailey case was disposed of. That's now disposed of, and as I said to Deputy Martin, I recall a comment from a spokesperson for the Commission saying that they were now proceeding ahead with the drafting of the interim report. So I assume that the process that follows here with commissions of investigation will be rigorously applied by the judge. And all I've said to the deputies is that whenever the report is received by me, I will of course publish the report. Just because I happen to be the sponsoring minister of this commission of investigation doesn't allow for it not to happen. So of course, when Judge Fennelly submits his final report after that process, I will of course publish it. I can't answer your question, Deputy Adams, as to when that will be, nor can I say to you, or indeed to Deputy Martin, is that going to be before the next general election? The government have a great deal of work to do in terms of securing the recovery of the economy for our people. You have the spring economic statement. You've got to make preparations for estimates and for the budget. He was involved in tribunals that went on for a very long time, Deputy. You had dig-outs and stuff behind radiators and all the rest of it. This is a very clear-cut case here of a very eminent judge, conducting a commission of investigation, and he is entirely competent to deal with the terms of reference that this House, including both of you, approved in the House here for his work. And nobody, you wanted it dealt with in here, then you wanted an independent commission. You have that, now you want to dictate how that should be controlled, and getting away from the patronage and the control that Deputy Adams quite rightly spoke of. So, unlike you saying these things happen, there's a very clear process here with a very eminent justice in charge of it, and I respect that completely. And as I said, I've published all of the documentation that has come along, and whenever the final report is presented to me, I will of course publish it.
Well, thank you. So that concludes